I will bind my enemy Demetrios and Phanagora in blood and dust with all the dead. I will bind my enemy in blood and dust with all the dead. There's been a lot of talk about Hecate online lately, so let's talk about the Hecate that you know versus the Hecate that the ancients feared and often used in the curse tablets. And let me tell you, she is all over them. People invoked Hecate when they wanted somebody broken, bent, bound, or something overturned. She was the deity that you would invoke along with some others when you needed help with a curse. For example, this curse tablet: I will bind Soskelia and her possessions and her great fame and business and mind. Let her become an enemy to her friends. I will bind her beneath murky Tartaros in painful bonds with Hecate of the underworld and Erinyes who drive men mad. Now, Hecate is actually one of the most prominent deities that appears in the curse tablets in ancient Greece. This article on JSTOR says Hecate is one of the most prominent divinities to appear in cursed tablets throughout the Greek world, and especially in Athens. Scholars debate the exact role of Hecate and other divinities in the binding ritual, but there is no question that the cursors recognize them as powerful forces who could be invoked to exercise some kind of control over the target. Hecate retains the characteristics of power and authority that she has in other tablets. The cursor invokes her as his or her supporter in the curse. Hecate is not mentioned simply as the underworld goddess. Along with Erinyes, she will be helpful for the curse. Another curse tablet invokes her and says, I bind Bios, the slave of Philonikos and Agathon. Socrates be bound, Hermes of the underworld and Hecate of the underworld. We've talked about this before. What this person is doing is taking the people that they want to curse, and instead of directly cursing them themselves, they are registering them with the gods. Another article goes on to connect Hecate and Artemis. It says two reliefs from the Agora excavations represent figures with attributes of Hecate. Both reliefs depict a frontal figure wearing a polos and carrying at least one and probably originally two torches. The right hands of the figures are not preserved. In Attica, Hecate was identified with Artemis by the end of the 5th century, when Artemis Hecate appears in the accounts of the treasures of the other gods. Only attested representation of Artemis Hecate, an inscribed archaistic triple-bodied Hecatean from Epidaurus dating from the 1st or 2nd century demonstrates that she is iconographically closer to Hecate than to Artemis. In Attica, both Hecate and Artemis Hecate are associated with Hermes, probably owing to their common protective capacities. On a large 4th century votive relief, low relief figure of Hecate or Artemis Hecate appears on one side of its architectural frame. Evidence for shrines of Hecate in the vicinity of the Agora is meager, but as the goddess of crossroads and protectress of entrances to private houses, she may have received dedications in small shrines on many of the streets in the city or in front of private dwellings. Many of the Hellenistic and Roman Hecatea found in the excavations were probably set up in front of houses. Several small crossroads enclosures in the vicinity of the Agora have been tentatively identified as suitable for shrines to Hecate. In ancient times, she wasn't so much a healer. I only say that because a lot of the devotees who work with her now say how much she has helped them and healed them. But all evidence suggests that historically Hecate was the protector. She could divert evil spirits. She was the master of curses, and you would invoke her if you needed to. She's mentioned constantly in the curse tablets. In the PGM, they call her Brimo, which is the terrifying one. She devours souls. Sometimes she has a body of a snake, and she bears a torch, and she commands the daimones. So she was very much an honored deity, but she was also respected and revered and viewed as a very powerful goddess that really bordered on the ominous.